how to set healthy boundaries, why would you do that, how to recognize if your boundaries are not there, and how you can start loving yourself more to then set those boundaries with those around you, with people that you love. Welcome back to the channel. If you're here for the first time, my name is Marta. I am a mindset coach, yoga teacher, personal trainer, and women empowerment coach. And my desire is to help as many women as possible coming back to themselves, understanding who they are, living their life in alignment with their truth, with their truest, authentic self. So let's dive into today's episode. Today, I wanted to talk to you about boundaries because it is something that until we actually bring the awareness to, we don't actually know if we have them or not. And for a very long time in my life, I didn't know anything about boundaries. I didn't really honor my boundaries. I didn't really understand the dynamics of my relationships and how people pleasing and how lack of boundaries were having a toll on my relationships, and actually led to then breaking of my 17-year relationship with my ex-partner, with my daughter's dad. And I think when we can start bringing awareness and understand that boundaries is something that's not, it's not an energy of pushing and pressing and being aggressive with it. It is simply honoring yourself and simply understanding that without healthy boundaries, your relationships fail because you grow resentful towards the people, because you get depleted, you get tired, you are exhausted. And you certainly are not in your feminine energy when you people please, when you push, when you constantly wonder if that person loves you, wants you, whatever that is for you. It is so crucial to set your own boundaries. So first point of this video I wanted to bring to you is to set healthy boundaries. You have to know who you are. You need to understand yourself. You need to know yourself. You need to know what your wants and desires are. What is it that you want from relationships, and how you want the dynamic of the relationships, whether it's friendships, whether it's a business partnership, whether it is your romantic relationship. Without knowing what you want and what you want to be treated as, how you want to be spoken to, without knowing these things, it's very hard to set boundaries, because you need to have the awareness of who it is that you are and what is it that you want to bring into your life. So knowing yourself. So this journey of self-discovery for many of us is we are being born into this world, and then from a very young age, we are being told of how to be, how to feel, what is appropriate, so socially appropriate. And then we get these limiting beliefs, and we get this vision, or not vision, but like a view of the world. And then we learn that when we are obedient, when we're not speaking our truth, when we are being a good girl, this is when we get love, this is when we get appreciation, this is where we are being seen. And of course, we very often carry that into our adulthood. And this was definitely a case for me. At the age of 33, I woke up to my awakening and realized that there are so many things and so much distortion in the way I go about the world and the way I am with my relationships, and how I deal with people in general. So to know thyself is to know who is it that you are, what's important to you, what values do you have. So I do recommend pulling a journal out if you haven't started already doing this work and understanding yourself more. Pulling the journal out and start writing, what is it that you want, where are you heading in life, what is important to you in your life, what are your values, and how you want to be treated by those around you, and what is definitely a deal breaker for you. So what is something that you would definitely not accept and allow in the relationships? And again, when it comes to setting boundaries, we should set boundaries with everyone around us. especially the romantic relationships, because the romantic partner in our life is one of the most important and significant person in our life, purely because we spend so much time with them, we interlace our energy all the time, we share our life with them. So it's so important for us to stand our ground, to know who we are, and authentically voice our boundaries. So you need to know yourself to have the ability to know what boundaries you want to set in your life. It's important also to avoid silent boundaries, because if you meet someone new, and this is often the case where we meet someone new, for instance, a romantic relationship, and especially romantic relationship, we want to be liked, we want to impress someone, and it's very easy to have the perspective that if I am kind and genuine and I am a good human being and I don't want to wrong anyone, people will treat me in the same way. Now, this is very, very tricky, because oftentimes that's not the case. So silent boundaries are the boundaries that have not been spoken about, the boundaries that we think that they are there, things that you think are natural and normal, and you wouldn't treat someone or speak to someone in a certain way. You presume and you go into the assumption that that person won't do that to you, and of course that's not the case. Everyone comes from different background. We all have different stories. We all have different wounds that we carry. We all have different upbringing and childhood, and of course we all have a very different view on the world and the perspective on relationships, on how we go about life. So I think it's so important to not leave any silent boundaries unspoken. In other words, voice what's important to you, have the communication with the person that you've just met, and let them know what's important to you, where you're heading in life, what things are important, and how you would like to be treated. And I'm not saying you sit on the first date and you pull out the list and you say, these are my boundaries and you better not cross them. Of course not. That's not how we do it. We come from a very feminine energy. We come from the softness of our femininity. But when we are in a conversation with someone, and these things should come naturally when we say, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. And of course, when someone is showing you signs that they are crossing your boundaries or they are very close to your boundary, that's when you say, I don't like when someone speaks to me that way. That's not something for me. I appreciate, if someone is speaking to me in that way. And so, or speaking to me or treating me, whatever, fill in the blank. So it's important not to leave any silent boundaries, because we cannot be under assumption that people will treat us the way we want them to treat us. And no one has a crystal ball, no one reads your mind, no one knows you enough, especially in those very early stages of getting to know someone. But also when you are in a long-term relationship and you know that your boundaries have been broken, and the way you know that your boundaries have been broken is if you are resentful towards someone. If you feel resentment towards your friends, family, your partner, this is the sign that your boundaries have been crossed and you have not taken the time to voice it, to set those boundaries. And I think it's really important to take the ownership of that, because it's very easy to drop into the victimhood mindset, where you're like, okay, well, why are they crossing my boundaries? Like, because again, we had the assumption that they understand what our boundaries are, but of course people don't. And we should never leave that at question. We should never leave that space. We want to be clear. We want to communicate what boundaries are important to us as we go. The earlier the better, because then you can see and you can learn if this particular person, this romantic relationship, this friend is for you. Because if they can't honor your boundaries and how you feel is not important enough to them, then potentially that is not a friend or partner or or boss that should be in your life. So boundaries are there to set people for success, not to fail in a relationship with you. And now that's really important. So boundaries are, if you want to think about it, if you have your own home and it's fenced. So say you are your own home and you have a fence surrounding this house. These are your boundaries. But of course, to know yourself is to know the boundaries as well, and know, okay, this is why I accept, and there is the boundary. This is where I wouldn't go. This is what I don't want to be spoken to as. This is how I don't want to feel around people, and I don't want to be treated that way. So again, going back to knowing yourself, knowing your boundaries, knowing your fence, knowing where those boundaries end. And it's also important to honor others' boundaries, because you can't just expect for people to honor your boundaries when you are crossing theirs. So it's important to understand that where your fence ends is where their fence starts, and having an awareness and understanding where my boundaries are and where are the boundaries of others. So boundaries are there to set someone up for success, not to fail in the relationship with you. And what I mean by that is, if you are very clear with what boundaries you have, and you have voiced them, and you have basically mapped it out to someone, this is how I want to be treated, that's how I want to be spoken to, this is how I like affection to be shown to me, etc., etc. If you have given this map of your boundaries, a map of who you are to someone, you are setting them for success, because there is no silent boundaries anywhere. There is no room for people to cross your boundaries, because they are very aware of what you accept and what you don't accept. So set people up for success in relationships with you. And this is also important to understand, that boundaries, again, there's a myth, and there's this notion of that a boundary is something that's negative. A boundary is something that you are being aggressive, that you block yourself off from people. It's actually contrary to that. It's actually absolutely opposite to that, because when you set healthy boundaries with love and compassion, with understanding, with a nice energy, feminine energy, when you speak them up, which I will be talking about in a minute as well, when you set them boundaries up, you set people up for success, because they know what they can and can't do with you, so that you don't leave room for people to just cross them because they have not been aware of your boundaries. So it's so important to set your boundaries, stand in your truth, stand in your power. And I just wanted to say here as well, before we move on to the five basic boundaries, or 5 areas that we should set boundaries in our life. To love yourself is to know yourself. To love yourself is to speak your truth. To know yourself is to set boundaries. Setting boundaries is inherent part of your femininity. It's of your feminine power, and it's an inherent part of your self-love and your self-honoring. So never think that by you setting the boundaries, never think that this is something that's negative. And this is why it's so important to, when we get to set boundaries, which I will be talking about in just a minute, of how we set those boundaries and what is the energy that we want to bring and how we want to talk about them. It's important to know that every time you set boundary, and every time you stand up for yourself, every time you speak the truth that's coming from your soul, from your deepest desires, wants and needs, by you honoring you in that way, you are showing yourself that you can count on you, that you have your own back, that you appreciate you, and that you matter. And that message to the subconscious mind is ingraining into your brain, where then this is a part of your self-love, this is a part of your self-discovery, this is a part of your growth, is to understand how we set the boundaries, why I want to set them, why is this important to me. And that way you can almost filter people that come to your life. Because if someone is breaking your boundaries and you've told them once, you've told them twice, you've asked them nicely, and you said, not nicely, but like with love and compassion, from this very nice energy, and someone is breaking your boundaries, that's the time to know that this person should no longer be in your life. So boundaries are a roadmap to you. It's a roadmap to your life, to your relationships. And again, it sets people up for success, providing that they are the right people. Okay, let's move on to the 5 basic boundary areas. So where in our life we should be setting those boundaries. Number 1 is physical boundaries. So of course, when you are in a romantic relationship and you don't really like being shown affection in public, and that makes you cringe every time someone does it, or this new partner or your partner in general does it to you, it is important to voice to them and say, I love when you're giving me affection. I absolutely love that, and it makes me feel good, it makes me feel seen, and it makes me feel wanted. But I really don't like when we do this in public. It makes me feel uncomfortable, and I cringe and I get anxious about people looking, and I would really appreciate if we could just show affection to each other in our private space, in at home, in the, you know, can we keep this as our beautiful intimacy that we have? And when you come from that place, and as you could hear, I was coming from the place of, I am voicing what's important to me, how this makes me feel, and how I want to be treated, how my physical boundary is broken, and how it makes me feel. And I did it with a very loving energy, without loathing someone, without saying, you always do this, you know, because there's a massive difference. And I think a lot of the time in relationships in general, any relationship, friendships, relationships, at work, it's important what energy we come from. Because if you come from the place of, this is not okay for me, and I'm just letting you know that's how I would like to be treated, or that's how I want to be spoken to, and these are my physical boundaries, so my body is mine to have, and I respect it, and I like certain things and I don't like certain things. We are all very different. Again, if you met this new partner, or you're going dating with someone, and all of a sudden someone is hugging you or kissing you in public, to them, this might be the way they show affection, the way they like to show you off, and that's amazing, that's beautiful. But to you, it's not comfortable. It's important to voice that, because if you don't, you will grow resentful. And when you grow resentful, you lose respect. And then if you think about resentment, it's like layers upon layers upon layers. Because we haven't had the guts to speak our truth, to stand in our power and set those boundaries, the resentment grows. And the one, I believe that, and this was definitely the case for me, over years with my ex-partner, I just grew resentful. I lost my respect for him because he was very much in the feminine energy and I was very much in masculine, which was, of course, my dynamic that I have set from the beginning. And I understand that today. And that's how we learn, that's how we change, and we can now make different choices. But I know that resentment in relationships is like number one thing that gets people to break up, that makes this relationship unsuccessful. Because when we are growing resentful towards something, towards someone, it's like, again, layer upon layer upon layer, because people keep breaking our boundaries that we have not set. And then we get overwhelmed, resentful, tired, exhausted, because we go and people please, because we're trying to, fill everyone's cup without having ours filled. So number one, physical boundaries. Think about it. What are your physical boundaries? And the thing is, you don't really have to sit there and journal it, but to know yourself and to know your boundaries, be aware of your body. Your body is telling you and giving you constant messages. When you are interacting with someone, check in with yourself. I have learned and I've grown to be about 80% inside of, I'm in my inner self about 80% of the time when I'm interacting with people. And oftentimes, I say 80, maybe less, because I am a very good listener. I really kind of soak up the conversations, and I'm trying to be really, really present with people. And I think that's very important. But there is a point in those conversations, in those interactions, when I check in with myself and I'm like, how does this make me feel? How do I feel around this person? And I check my energy, I check my solar plexus, I check how my body is reacting. Your body knows. Your body is telling you, okay, when your body gets anxious about something in the situations, you can then stop and speak and say, oh, that doesn't feel good. I don't like when you said that. I don't really like that. I don't like that joke. Or I don't really like when you cuddle me in public, because your body will tell you. So check in with yourself, be in tune with yourself, and start embodying, speaking your boundaries out loud. Number 2, emotional boundaries. So speaking up about what your feelings are when we notice that we need to vent. Okay, so emotional boundaries is sometimes, especially as female, we just want to vent. We just have emotions. We have a lot of emotions. We are an emotional beings, which is different to men. Men are very logical in their heads. So it's important to own your emotions, to know your emotions, to learn about emotions. It's not only anger and sadness and happiness. There's all spectrum of emotions that you have every day. And so to know emotions, to be able to name them, and to, again, speak about your emotions to others and say, this is how this makes me feel. If something doesn't feel right and it's a hell no, it's a hell no, and it should be a hell no, because again, you will grow resentful towards that person and that relationship potentially won't last. So emotional boundaries. When we as women just want to vent to our man, to our friend or whoever, and usually men do that when they try to fix us or they try to come and solve the problem that we are sharing with them. It's important to understand that men don't do it because they try to control us. They don't do it because it's something about possessiveness or anything like that, or they're trying to change us. It's more about men are different species than women. They function different. They function from the logical. They are problem solvers. And so naturally they will jump into trying to solve the problem. So where you set the boundary is like, honey, I just want to vent to you. I don't need you to tell me what to do. I don't need you to try and fix the problem. Thank you so much for listening. I love you. And can I just vent? I just wanted to tell you how I feel about this situation that I had at work. And that's it. And you, again, coming from this very soft, feminine energy where you have no agenda, you just say, this is what I want and this is why I say what I say, and my boundary is for you not to judge it, not to have an opinion on it. I just want you to listen. And so when we can again speak that, our relationships thrive, because our men and people around us, our friends, whoever that is, it could be any relation, could be relationship with your child. Those relationships will thrive because you have set those boundaries and you said, this is what I'm just doing. I'm just sharing my emotions. Okay, number 3 is sexual boundaries. So of course, it's so important to understand what is it that you like, how you like to be pleasured, what's important to you in intimate relationship, how you want to be worshipped, how your sex life, how do you thrive in your sex life, and what makes you feel safe, what makes you feel seen, and what makes you feel thriving in your sex life. And never, ever, ever be scared of speaking what is important to you in bed. If there is something or a position or something that your partner wants to do, but it doesn't feel right to you and you really don't want to do this, you have to speak it up. I can't stress enough. I think there's so many women out there that don't know what they like when it comes to sex, and they just being swayed by whatever men decides to do. No, we have to take our power back. We need to own our sexuality, and we have to own and speak boldly of what is okay with us. What do we like and what we don't like? Again, going back to the fact that way you will know that this sexual partner or your date that you're seeing and you're sleeping with, or the partner in general, you are setting them up for success. And also you then get to know if you are compatible, because some people are quite kinky. They like kinky stuff, and some people are not at all. And so setting your boundaries, owning your body, worshipping your body in that way, and speaking your truth when it comes to sexuality and your physical body in a sexual way. Number 4 is intellectual boundaries. So what do you see in the world and your opinions? Now, it is so important that in the conversation, when you're having a conversation with someone and you have a different opinion about something, whether politics, whatever that is, maybe not whether, but politics or any opinions that you have, and someone comes and they are banishing your opinions, or they're trying to battle with you to try to prove the point, I think it's so important to say, this is my boundary, and so my boundary is, let's have our own opinions about the world. We all have different views. We come from different places, from different experiences, and we have a different opinions about something, which is absolutely perfect. But we need to honor and respect each other's opinions without trying to persuade, without trying to all of a sudden argue over someone else's opinion. Not only do we need to understand bring that to the conversation. This is my opinion, and you can have your opinion, and I respect your opinion, but let's have respect to each other despite the fact that we have a different opinion. I think also oftentimes in life, in relationships, and I've done it myself, you're trying to persuade someone, you're trying to make them think the way you do, because that way we have some sort of acknowledgement and appreciation for ourselves. And this righteousness, the feeling of righteousness, is a very, very masculine feeling. It's a very masculine energy. So to stay in your feminine, just be at ease with it and be like, okay, this is your opinion. I have my opinion. Let's leave it at that, and let's respect each other in this conversation about different opinions, because let's just have a conversation rather than a battle. So number 4, intellectual boundaries. What you see the world as is absolutely fine, it's absolutely perfect, but respect others for having their own opinion, and this should work, of course, towards yourself as well. And number 5 is financial boundaries. Very often we don't want to talk about money, especially in early dating stages. We struggle to talk about money because it's a taboo. It has been for a very long time. Patriarchy made sure of that. So it's important to be able to voice what are your boundaries financially. In other words, if you are in a relationship with someone and you don't like someone spending money on something, and obviously you are now sharing money, or you have some sort of togetherness in your financial situation, it's important to voice what's important to you, whether we can save up for something that we can do together. And if your partner is constantly spending money and you can never save up enough, I think it's important to talk about that. And again, coming from the place of love, and coming from the place of understanding, and just speaking it up, being authentic to yourself. So this episode is there to bring you awareness to the boundaries, to ask yourself a question: where am I resentful in my life? Because where you are resentful is where your boundaries have not been set, or where your boundaries have been crossed. And that's a very, very good indication, and that's a very good beginning to start working with your boundaries and understanding what your boundaries are, and where they have been crossed. And to talk about your boundaries, I'm just going to say, I said a few times, but I'm just going to reiterate that to talk about your boundaries is important. What the energy that you bring into the conversation. If you are about to have this difficult conversation, tune into yourself, take a few deep breaths, and just remind yourself and detach from someone else's agenda. Because all you want to do is to voice what's important to you. And as a goddess that you are, as a feminine woman that you are, you just tell them this is what it is, and then you just observe. That's all you do. You detach emotion from it. You come in from this softness, from this very gentle, compassionate, loving energy, because it's so important how we say something. You can be saying the same sentence with a completely different energy, from fear and anger and resentment and aggression. And you could say exactly the same sentence from the place of love. Your outcome will be 100% different. So it's important to tune into yourself, to listen to yourself, to be like, okay, I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say it, and I'm going to detach. And all I'm going to do after this is I'm going to observe if anything has changed. If this person is honoring my boundaries. If they don't, you remind them again and again. And if they keep breaking your boundaries, girl, you move away from that. We don't invite, as a feminine goddess that you are, we don't invite into our lives people who don't respect us, people who don't honor our feelings, people who walk over us. We are not a doormat. At times when you are a doormat are over, and it's time to step into your power, to step into your femininity, speak your truth. And most importantly, honor yourself, honor your being, your journey. Understand and not be afraid of shedding those people away that don't respect your boundaries. Thank you so much for listening. Subscribe to this channel, or follow on if you are on Spotify. I love you so much. Share this channel to those women that you think this might be helpful to, and comment below. What did you think? Did you find this valuable? And I'd love to connect with you. I'd love to know who you are. And I can't wait to connect, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.